Once upon a time, in a kingdom kissed by the rising sun and cradled by towering mountains, there lived a princess named Amara. Her heart was as vast as the skies, and her courage unmatched. Unlike other princesses who cared for only jewels, gowns, and banquets, Amara's soul beat for the smallest lives, the creatures of the forest that spread like a green ocean beyond the castle walls. Amara often wandered the woods, barefoot among the moss and wildflowers, her long black hair flowing like a river of night. She spoke to the birds, laughed with the foxes, and sat quietly with the deer under the shade of ancient oaks. They trusted her, for she loved them as fiercely as any human life, and they, in turn, protected her from harm in ways only the forest could. One summer afternoon, the air shimmered unnaturally, heavy with heat. The birds were restless, chattering anxiously, and the squirrels scampered higher into the branches than usual. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with smoke. In the distance, a thin wisp of flame curled upward, twisting into the sky. A lightning bolt had struck a dry hill, igniting the forest. At first, the palace guards considered the fire distant, thinking it would die out naturally. But Amara saw differently. Her heart pounded as she watched the flame spread faster than the wind, consuming brush and tree alike. Animals scattered in panic, and she could see them through the smoke, their eyes wide with fear, their tiny voices lost in the roar of the fire. She could not stay inside the palace while her friends burned. "Storm," she cried, and her magnificent black horse galloped to her side. Without waiting for anyone else, she mounted and rode toward the burning forest. Sparks danced around her, setting the hem of her silken gown aflame, but she did not falter. The wind howled in her ears, carrying the scent of smoke and scorched earth. Her mind was one thought: save every life. The first creatures she encountered were a family of rabbits trapped beneath a fallen oak. Their tiny paws scratched frantically at the dirt, eyes wide with terror. Amara dismounted, brushing away the ashes and lifting the heavy trunk with all her strength. "Hurry, little ones. Follow me," she whispered. One by one, they scurried into a safe clearing, their fur singed but their lives intact. No sooner had she helped the rabbits than she heard a frightened cry. A young fox was caught on a jagged rock, flames licking its paws. Amara ran, dodging falling embers and branches, reaching the fox just in time. Wrapping it in her cloak, she leapt across a gap in the scorched earth, landing on safer ground. The fox trembled against her chest, but Amara whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." Hour after hour, she pressed deeper into the forest. The flames were taller than palace towers, and the smoke stung her lungs. Birds circled overhead, some injured, some frantic. She scooped up wounded ones in her hands, carrying them to sheltered groves she had memorized from childhood. A doe limped beside her, crying out for her fawn trapped in a burning thicket. With a courage she did not know she possessed, Amara parted the flames with her arms, clearing a path for the frightened fawn to escape. By mid-afternoon, the fire had reached the heart of the forest. Ancient trees groaned as they cracked and fell, sending sparks high into the sky. In the middle of the inferno, Amara spotted a baby bear, its small body pressed against a tree, smoke curling around its fur. She ran without hesitation. The heat was unbearable, searing her skin, and ash clung to her eyelashes, but she did not stop. She lifted the cub gently, shielding it with her arms. The bear whimpered against her chest, but she whispered, "I won't let anything harm you." Emerging from the flames, she fell to her knees, coughing and weeping, the bear safe. As night approached, the forest seemed to roar with fury. Flames consumed everything in their path, turning leaves to embers and branches to hay. But Amara did not stop. She saved owls caught in burning nests, squirrels trapped on high branches, and even a family of porcupines huddled under a blazing bush. Each rescue brought danger closer to her, but each life she saved was a victory against despair. Finally, she came across a clearing where the fire had formed a ring around a wounded stag. Its legs were scorched, and smoke curled from its fur. The princess approached carefully, murmuring words of comfort. She wrapped the stag in her cloak, dragging it to a safer patch of grass. Exhausted and burned, she leaned against the ground for a moment, tears mixing with soot. Around her, the animals she had saved began to gather, forming a circle of trust and gratitude. Though the fire had taken much, Amara's courage inspired a miracle. As the first stars appeared in the sky, the flames began to die down, and the wind shifted to carry the smoke away. Animals cautiously returned to calmer areas, guided by her voice. She had risked everything, but the forest was alive, its heart still beating. The princess's hands were blistered, her gown in tatters, and her face streaked with ash, yet a radiant smile broke through her exhaustion. Each life she had saved was a testament to the power of love, bravery, and unyielding compassion. And though the forest bore the scars of the flames, it also carried the memory of the princess who had walked through fire, who had stared death in the face and chosen to protect all living creatures. Night had fallen, but the forest was not yet calm. The air was thick with smoke and ash, and the distant crackle of dying flames echoed like a chorus of fear. Princess Amara sat under a scorched oak, her body trembling from exhaustion, yet her mind refused rest. Around her, the animals she had saved huddled together, their eyes wide, still filled with the shock of survival. The forest was not only scorched, it was wounded. Fallen trees created jagged barriers, streams had dried in the heat, and the once vibrant green carpet of moss and ferns was now blackened and brittle. But amidst this devastation, Amara saw something fragile and alive, a tiny nest perched precariously on a half-burned branch. In it, 3 baby birds chirped weakly, unable to fly. Her heart ached. Carefully, she climbed to the branch, her hands steady despite the pain from burns. Smoke stung her eyes, and sparks fell like tiny fiery daggers, but she extended her arms and lifted the nest gently. "Don't worry, little ones," she whispered. "I've got you." With incredible balance, she descended, bringing the nest safely to the ground. The bird's mother fluttered nearby, exhausted and scared. She nuzzled her chicks, chirping softly as if thanking Amara herself. But there was no time to rest. A deafening roar shattered the quiet. The sound of trees collapsing under their own heat. A family of deer had become trapped in a section of the forest where fire blocked their usual path. Amara's heart leapt into her throat. "Hold on," she shouted, sprinting through the smoky maze. Sparks hissed against her skin as she guided the terrified creatures through a narrow passage she carved with fallen branches. The youngest fawn stumbled, and she caught it mid-fall, cradling it against her chest. By midnight, the worst of the fire had passed, but the danger was not over. Smoke still curled in thick clouds, and pockets of embers smoldered, threatening to reignite. Amara moved with the animals she had saved, guiding them toward a hidden glade she had known since childhood, a sanctuary where water pooled from a small spring and trees had remained unburned. She whispered encouragement, her voice hoarse but gentle, coaxing even the shyest foxes and the smallest rabbits forward. As she walked, she noticed movement in the shadows. A lone wolf emerged from the smoky haze, its silver fur dusted with ash. At first, Amara froze, fear creeping in for the first time that night. But the wolf's eyes were not aggressive. They were wise and knowing, almost as if it understood the princess's heart. The wolf circled her once, then ran ahead, pausing to look back as if signaling the safest path through the fire-ravaged forest. "Thank you," Amara whispered, tears streaking her soot-covered face. For a moment, the fear vanished. Here was a creature she could not save with hands alone, yet it chose to guide her and the animals. She realized that courage and compassion were not just hers. They were recognized by every living being who shared her world. The glade was a haven. Water from the spring shimmered in the moonlight, reflecting the burnt trees around them. Amara helped the animals drink and bathe, soothing their burns as best she could. Her own hands were raw and blistered, her gown torn and charred, yet she did not stop. She cleaned the tiny wounds of birds, rinsed the soot from the fur of foxes, and comforted the trembling deer. Every life mattered, every heartbeat deserved her care. Hours passed, and exhaustion threatened to take her. Amara leaned against a tree, the forest eerily silent except for the occasional crackle of embers. She closed her eyes, only to be awakened by a soft cry. A tiny fawn had slipped from the group and was stuck in a shallow pit created by the fire's destruction. Without hesitation, she pried the rocks away, soot and ash coating her hands, and lifted the fawn to safety. Its mother nuzzled it, tears gleaming in her eyes. Amara's own tears mixed with the ash on her cheeks. It was then she realized something. The fire had taken much, but it had also revealed the depth of life in the forest, the resilience of every creature, the connections between them, and the power of her own courage. She had walked through fire, faced death, yet she had emerged not just alive, but more determined than ever to protect those who could not protect themselves. Dawn broke, painting the smoky sky in shades of gold and crimson. The forest was battered, yet life was stirring again. Birds sang cautiously, leaves glistened with morning dew, and small streams began to flow once more. Amara moved among the animals, encouraging them to return to their homes where possible, always ready to intervene if danger remained. But the fire had left its scars. Trees that had stood for centuries were reduced to blackened skeletons. The earth was scarred, and the smoke lingered like a memory. Amara stood in the glade, looking out at the devastation, and for the first time, felt a wave of sorrow that made her knees weak. She wept openly, tears streaming down her face, mingling with soot and ash. She had saved many lives, yes, but she could not save everything. Some nests were gone, some homes destroyed, and some creatures had not survived. Yet even in her grief, Amara found hope. From the ashes, tiny green shoots emerged, hinting at the resilience of life. The animals she had saved nuzzled her, their trust and affection a balm for her aching heart. She realized that courage was not about never feeling fear or sadness, it was about acting in spite of it. And love, she understood, could burn brighter than any fire. As the day progressed, villagers from the kingdom arrived at the forest edge. They had seen the smoke and feared the worst. When they saw the animals safe and Amara standing among them, singed and exhausted but triumphant, they gasped in awe. Word spread quickly, this was the princess who had walked through fire for the lives of creatures who could not speak. Her brave became legend overnight, a story whispered in every home, sung in every square, and remembered in the hearts of all who valued life. Princess Amara, though weary and battered, could not rest entirely. She spent weeks helping the forest recover, planting new trees, rebuilding shelters for animals, and guiding lost creatures back to their homes. Each day, she saw the forest slowly healing, and with it, her own spirit. Her body bore the marks of her courage, blisters, scars, and soot-streaked skin. But her heart was unbroken, more alive and vibrant than ever. By the time the first full moon rose after the fire, the forest had regained a sense of peace. Streams sparkled, flowers bloomed tentatively, and the animals, though wary, began to resume their lives. Amara walked among them, her long black hair flowing, a quiet smile on her soot-streaked face. She had faced fire, smoke, and fear, yet she had emerged not just as a princess, but as a guardian of life itself. And the forest remembered her. The deer would pause to bow their heads as she passed, foxes would curl around her feet in trust, birds would perch nearby, chirping softly. Even the wolf, who had guided her through the darkest moments, returned to linger at the forest's edge, watching over her silently. Princess Amara's bravery had ignited more than courage, it had created a bond between humans and nature that would endure forever. Days passed, but the forest was still not fully safe. Though the fire had died down, hidden embers lurked beneath the ash, ready to ignite again. Princess Amara knew that danger could return at any moment. Her body ached from burns, her hands were raw, and her gown was a tattered memory of silk, yet her spirit refused rest. Every creature she had saved depended on her vigilance. Early one morning, as the mist hovered over the charred land, Amara heard frantic cries coming from a grove that had survived only partially. She ran toward the sound, her legs trembling, her lungs filled with the scent of smoke and burnt leaves. There, she found a family of owls trapped in a half-collapsed tree. The branches were brittle, threatening to fall at any moment. The owls' wide eyes reflected terror, their feathers singed and ruffled. Amara didn't hesitate. She climbed the unstable tree, every movement careful, balancing herself against the weakened limbs. Sparks hissed at her arms as she reached the nest. Gently, she lifted the baby owls, her fingers singed by the heat but steady with determination. She whispered soothing words, "You're safe now. I've got you." One by one, she carried them down to the safety of the glade, where a small pool of water reflected her soot-streaked face. No sooner had she set the owls down than she noticed smoke rising from a nearby thicket. Flames were reigniting in a place she had thought safe. From within the smoke, a terrified red fox ran, carrying its injured kits on its back. Amara dashed toward them, weaving between smoldering trees. The ground beneath her cracked, sending up clouds of ash. She scooped up the kits and the mother, shielding them with her cloak as she ran, tears stinging her eyes. Hours blurred into one another. The princess moved tirelessly, guided by courage, empathy, and the bond she shared with the forest. She rescued a fawn trapped under fallen rocks, guided a family of rabbits through a narrow escape path, and even carried an injured hawk, whose wing had been scorched by the fire. Each rescue took every ounce of strength she possessed, yet Amara never faltered. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in red and gold, she realized she had reached the deepest part of the forest, the oldest and tallest grove, where ancient trees rose like cathedral spires. Here, the fire had raged fiercest. Smoke swirled around the trunks, and the ground was a patchwork of burning embers. Yet Amara's courage did not waver. A low, mournful cry echoed through the grove. A young stag, majestic and proud, was trapped between two fallen trees, flames closing in around him. Amara's heart ached. She ran toward him, dodging falling branches and leaping over burning roots. The heat was unbearable, blistering her skin, yet she extended her arms, wrapping the stag in her embrace. Slowly, carefully, she guided him through the inferno, her face pressed against his neck to shield him from the smoke. Suddenly, a massive branch cracked overhead. Amara pushed the stag aside just in time as it fell where they had stood moments before. Her shoulder was bruised, a jagged scrape cutting into her skin, but she did not stop. With a final effort, she led the stag to safety, collapsing beside him, exhausted, ash covering every inch of her body. The animals she had saved gathered around, nuzzling her hands, their trust and gratitude giving her the strength to rise once more. Night fell again, darker than before. The sky was streaked with embers that floated upward like fireflies. Amara found herself alone in a section of the forest where few animals had survived the initial blaze. Yet she refused to give in to fear. She whispered to the night, "I will not leave anyone behind." Her voice carried through the trees, and slowly, timid creatures began to emerge, rabbits, foxes, deer, even a lone hedgehog. Among them was a mother bear, her cub clinging to her side, both trembling from smoke inhalation. The bear regarded Amara cautiously, sensing both danger and trust. With gentle hands, she guided the pair to safety, her voice calm and soothing. The cub nuzzled her arm, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. Amara felt a wave of emotion, realizing that every life she had touched now carried her courage into the world. By midnight, the forest had quieted. The immediate threat of fire had passed, but the scars remained. Trees lay broken, the earth was blackened, and the animals were weary. Amara, too, was exhausted beyond measure. Her body was battered, her lungs burned from smoke, and her skin was blistered. Yet she felt a quiet joy, a profound understanding that love and bravery could overcome even the fiercest of flames. She sat under a surviving oak tree, watching as the animals she had saved settled around her. The owls perched on the branches above, foxes curled near her feet, deer lay in the shadows, and the young stag nuzzled her shoulder. Tears mingled with soot on her face as she whispered, "We survived. Together, we survived." In the days that followed, Amara devoted herself to healing the forest. She planted new saplings where the old trees had fallen, rebuilt shelters for animals, and guided injured creatures back to their homes. Villagers arrived to assist, inspired by tales of the princess who had risked everything to save the forest. Together, they nurtured the land back to life, witnessing the resilience of nature and the enduring spirit of bravery. And through it all, Amara walked among them, her black hair streaked with ash, her gown tattered but her heart shining brighter than ever. She had faced fire and smoke, danger and despair, yet she had emerged not only as a princess but as a guardian, a beacon of hope for all creatures, human and animal alike. By the time the first full moon rose over the recovered forest, life had returned. Birds sang cautiously, deer grazed peacefully, and the foxes and rabbits thrived once more. Even the wise silver wolf returned. Standing at the edge of the forest as if to honor the princess who had risked everything for life itself. Princess Amara, though scarred and weary, smiled. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. Love was not always easy, but it was always worth fighting for. And she knew that as long as she stood in the forest, its creatures would never be alone, and its spirit would never be extinguished. The first light of dawn broke over the kingdom, casting a pale golden glow across the scorched land. The fire had long been extinguished, but its scars remained, blackened earth and skeletal trees, a reminder of the peril that had threatened all life in the forest. Princess Amara stood at the edge of the woods, her heart heavy yet full, surveying the aftermath. Though the devastation was immense, hope was sprouting. Tiny green shoots pushed through the ashes, birds cautiously returned to the branches, and the soft murmur of flowing streams brought life back to the charred landscape. Every creature she had saved emerged slowly, as if paying homage to their protector. Deer, foxes, rabbits, owls, and even the silver wolf she had met during the fire lingered nearby, trusting her implicitly. Amara walked among them, tending to the wounded and guiding the lost. She spoke softly to the creatures, brushing soot from their fur and feathers, whispering words of comfort. The baby bear she had rescued slept near her feet, trusting her completely, while the fawn she had saved followed her like a shadow. Each life she touched was a reminder that courage and compassion could restore even the deepest wounds. By midday, villagers had gathered at the edge of the forest, drawn by tales of the princess who had walked through fire. They came with food, water, and tools to help rebuild, but most importantly, they came with awe and gratitude. Mothers held their children close, pointing toward Amara and whispering, "See the princess who saved the forest." Children's eyes widened with wonder, imagining her leaping through flames, saving every living thing in her path. The king himself arrived, his expression a mix of pride and worry. "Amara," he said softly, approaching her, "you risked your life for creatures who cannot even speak. Your bravery is beyond measure. You have honored our kingdom and the very heart of life itself." Amara, her gown tattered, her hair singed, and her hands blister, bowed humbly. "Father," she replied, her voice quiet but steady, "I could not have stood by while they suffered. Every life matters, no matter how small." The villagers, inspired by her courage, began rebuilding shelters for animals whose homes had been destroyed. Together, they planted new trees, cleaned streams, and tended to the injured. Amara moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and her quiet strength. Even the smallest acts, reuniting a bird with its nest, guiding a rabbit to fresh grass, were celebrated. Every life saved was a victory, every moment of compassion a testament to her enduring heart. But despite the outward calm, Amara's soul carried the weight of what had been lost. She wandered to the oldest part of the forest, where the fire had burned hottest. Ancient trees had fallen, and nests were empty. Here, the sorrow was deeper, palpable. She knelt among the ashes, tears streaming down her soot-streaked face. "I wish I could have saved them all," she whispered. "I wish I could have saved everyone." As she mourned, a soft rustling reached her ears. From the shadows emerged the animals she had rescued. They circled her, nudging her hands and brushing against her legs. Even the baby bear climbed onto her lap, resting its head against her shoulder. In that moment, Amara understood something profound. While some lives had been lost, the majority had survived because of her courage, and life itself had endured. The forest, though scarred, was still alive, still breathing, and still beautiful. Word of Princess Amara's heroism spread across the kingdom. Poets wrote of her bravery, children performed plays in her honor, and artists painted her in flames, shielding creatures in her arms. But for Amara, the greatest reward was not the praise, it was seeing the forest thrive again. She spent days walking among the trees, checking on the animals, teaching the villagers how to care for the forest, and ensuring that no creature would ever be left behind again. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of red and gold, Amara sat beside the spring in the glade she had chosen as a sanctuary. The forest was quiet, peaceful, and slowly recovering. The silver wolf appeared once more, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching her silently. She reached out her hand, and the wolf stepped closer, allowing her to touch its fur. It was a moment of connection, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared and the journey they had endured together. As stars began to fill the night sky, Amara reflected on the lessons the fire had taught her. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was the decision to act despite it. Compassion was not always easy, but it had the power to heal, to protect, and to inspire. Life, in all its forms, was fragile and precious, and every heartbeat deserved to be cherished. The kingdom celebrated her return with a grand ceremony. Animals that had been rescued were honored alongside her, and the villagers shared stories of her bravery. The king placed a small, delicate crown upon her head, a symbol not just of royalty, but of courage, love, and dedication. Amara accepted it humbly, knowing that true royalty lay not in titles or wealth, but in the strength of one's heart and the love one showed to the world. Even after the ceremonies, Amara returned daily to the forest. She planted new trees, tended to injured animals, and walked the charred paths where the fire had raged. She spoke softly to the creatures, telling them stories of hope, courage, and survival. And slowly, the forest healed. Flowers bloomed in the burned earth, streams sparkled with life, and animals moved freely once more. Through it all, Princess Amara remained a symbol of hope. Her bravery and compassion became a legend, inspiring generations to come. Children who had witnessed her courage grew up with stories of the princess who walked through fire, who risked everything to save the innocent, and who never wavered in her love for all living things. And though the forest bore the scars of its ordeal, it also carried the memory of a princess whose heart was bigger than any flame, whose courage could not be measured, and whose love had saved countless lives. Every creature she had touched remembered her, and through them, her spirit lived on, forever entwined with the heart of the forest she had risked everything to protect. Princess Amara had learned that true bravery was not measured by victories over others, but by the willingness to face danger for the sake of life itself. And as she walked among the trees, her black hair flowing, her eyes shining with love and sorrow, she knew that the forest, and the world, was better because she had dared to care so deeply. The forest had begun to breathe again. Where once blackened earth and skeletal trees stood, new life was emerging. Tiny green shoots pushed up through the ash, flowers bloomed in brave clusters, and the stream sparkled like liquid crystal. Birds chirped cautiously, foxes explored the underbrush, and the deer moved gracefully, as if thanking the princess for her courage. The fire had left scars, but it had not destroyed hope. Princess Amara walked slowly along the path she had once cleared of flames. Her hands, still blistered in places, brushed against the soft leaves of new saplings. Her gown, tattered from the inferno, fluttered in the gentle morning breeze. Her hair, streaked with ash, caught the sunlight like a dark river glistening with silver threads. She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and triumph. The fire had taken much, but it had revealed the resilience of life. And the strength of her heart. Everywhere she looked, the animals she had saved were thriving. The baby bear had grown stronger, exploring the glade with cautious curiosity. The fawn she had rescued leapt joyfully among the newly sprouted grass. The foxes had returned to their dens, and the owls now perched high in the regenerated trees, their soft hoots carrying through the forest like gentle applause. Even the silver wolf she had met during the fire lingered at the edge of the trees, watching her with quiet admiration. Amara knelt by a small pool in the glade, gazing at her reflection. Her face was still streaked with soot, her eyes tired yet radiant with determination. She whispered softly, "We survived, together. And we will continue to thrive." As if in answer, a chorus of birds erupted into song, their melodies rising through the trees. The forest seemed to hum with life, a living testament to her bravery and love. Word of the princess's heroism had spread far and wide. The kingdom celebrated her not only for her courage, but for her unwavering compassion. Villagers planted trees and built shelters for the animals, inspired by her example. Children drew pictures of Amara walking through flames, saving every living creature in her path. Songs were composed in her honor, telling of a princess whose heart was bigger than the tallest mountains and whose bravery burned brighter than any fire. But for Amara, the greatest reward was not the praise of humans. It was the forest itself, the animals she had saved, the streams flowing freely again, the flowers blooming where fire had raged. She spent her days walking among them, speaking softly, guiding gently, and ensuring that every creature had a place to thrive. Her love was quiet yet powerful, a bond that transcended words. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky blazed with gold and crimson, Amara sat beneath her favorite oak tree. Around her, the animals gathered, forming a circle of trust and friendship. The baby bear rested its head on her lap, the fawn nuzzled her shoulder, and foxes curled at her feet. Even the silver wolf approached, allowing her to stroke its fur. Tears glistened on her soot-streaked face as she whispered, "We made it, we truly made it." In that moment, Amara realized something profound: bravery was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. Compassion was not always easy, but it could heal, protect, and inspire. Life was fragile, yes, but every heartbeat mattered, and every life she had touched carried a piece of her courage forward. She had faced fire and danger, had seen loss and sorrow, yet love had guided her through every trial. The forest fully healed over the months that followed. Trees grew taller, flowers carpeted the meadows, and streams glistened under the sun. Animals lived freely and safely, and villagers continued to honor the sanctuary she had created. Princess Amara became a symbol of hope, courage, and empathy, reminding all who heard her story that one heart could make an extraordinary difference. Years later, long after the fire had faded into memory, Amara walked through the forest with quiet pride. Her hair, now streaked with silver, flowed behind her. Her gown was simple, but her presence radiated strength. Birds perched on her shoulders, foxes trailed at her side, and deer moved gracefully around her. The forest had not forgotten her. It thrived because of her love, and in return, it had become a sanctuary not just for animals, but for the spirit of bravery and compassion. She knelt in the glade where she had first rescued the baby bear. The water of the spring shimmered, reflecting the golden sunlight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "Thank you for letting me be part of your lives. For trusting me. For letting me protect you." Around her, the forest seemed to sigh, the wind rustling through leaves like a gentle embrace. As the sun set, painting the sky with brilliant hues of orange and pink, Amara stood and raised her arms. In that quiet moment, she understood the deepest truth of her journey: courage, love, and compassion were eternal. The forest, the animals, and the kingdom itself had survived because of a heart willing to risk everything for others. And that heart, her heart, would forever be a beacon of hope, a flame that no fire could ever extinguish. The kingdom remembered Princess Amara not only as royalty, but as a hero, a guardian, and a symbol of selfless love. Children grew up hearing her story, learning that true bravery was measured by the lives one protected, and true power was measured by the depth of one's heart. Every creature in the forest carried her spirit with them, and the bond between humans and nature grew stronger with each passing year. And so, Princess Amara continued her walks through the forest, never ceasing in her care, never wavering in her courage. She had faced the fiercest fire, had confronted fear and despair, and had emerged not only as a survivor, but as a protector of life itself. Her legacy lived on in the rustle of leaves, the babble of streams, the songs of birds, and the trusting eyes of every creature she had saved. The forest, once scarred by flames, was now a place of life, love, and hope. And in its heart stood a princess whose bravery and compassion had shaped its destiny. A princess whose spirit burned brighter than any fire, forever guiding all who walked beneath the trees she had saved.